This game has infatuated me for years. I don't remember when I first saw it, or how, but I remember the intrigue that still entices me. Even though I don't even really like playing it, I always come back to it with some new refined enthusiasm, hoping that something else is gonna suck me in. So, let me introduce you to my favorite fighting game that I hate playing. Daraku Tenshi, or The Fallen Angels, was Saikyo's second attempt at a fighting game after the critical failure of their first fighter, Battle K Road. Instead of throwing in the towel and just focusing on their mini shmups, Saikyo's Still Hearts team wanted to prove themselves by making a fighter like no other. They spent years crafting a game that oozes style and confidently sets itself apart from whatever Capcom and SNK were churning out every couple of months. Until they ran out of time and budget, and then had to release an incomplete game that plays very familiarly, but also feels very off. Daraku Tenshi was a bit late to the party. A year prior saw the release of Tekken 3, and Capcom had already pushed out Street Fighter 3, Second Impact. At this point, the public knew what a good fighting game was. We've been playing them for years, and in my opinion, Daraku Tenshi isn't that. Nor is it really bad. It's worse than bad gameplay wise, because I love a lot of bad fighting games. Some of my favorite fighting games of all time are bad fighting games. But in my opinion, Daraku Tenshi is boring. It's incomplete. Then why the hell do I care about it? As I've said before, Daraku Tenshi has style. Even from just looking at art or screenshots, you get a sense of this dooming atmosphere. The stages are empty, the characters are grimy, and they all have this flair that not only sits them nicely next to their more popular contemporaries, but also makes them stand out all the same. The bleak and dismal art direction is absolutely palpable, which is a feeling that I don't think any other fighter has captured, or even wants to. Saikyo wanted to create something fantastical and trapped in realism, and you can really tell a lot of love went into this game. And man, some of the animations in this game are downright gorgeous, and have that oomph that is sorely missing from many fighters. The way the next opponent is introduced in the arcade mode, the little details like feathers falling off a cool when he does his flash kick. This game had so much charm. And speaking of cool, let's go over the roster a bit. Daraku Tenshi has 8 playable characters, and Cool is your guile-like charge character. Harry Ness is your hard-hitting grappler with a unique missile resource. Taro is your token green weirdo that 90s fighting games were dictated to have. Definitely the most awkward character in the game, and not just by his looks. Urien and Urian fit the twin quota and are also probably the most interesting characters in the game, gameplay-wise. Urien is the best character in the game with crazy jab pressure and a dash, while Urian is a grappler with a run similar to Guy from Street Fighter. Rosha is your fast and small little kid archetype who has some fun juggles. Torao is what Ryu would actually be if he was a real dude walking around fighting and not bathing. He's got some nice pokes. And finally, Haiji is my favorite character. He's got some fun armor and cool guard breaks. There are 2 bosses, Trigger and Carlos, or Gun and Sword Dude. They're playable with cheats. There were actually 4 more characters planned for Daraku Tenshi that were sadly never finished, but have since been data mined. You may have noticed that some of these characters are eerily similar to other popular fighting game characters. And that's probably not a coincidence. Game director Mitsuo Kodama and artist Stylos left Saikyo soon after Daraku Tenshi was released to join SNK, with one of their first projects being The King of Fighters 99, which had some very similar character designs. But for the gameplay itself, Daraku Tenshi plays similarly to a KOF style game with less mobility. There are 4 buttons, a dodge, guard cancels, guard meter, a POW-like super meter that starts to drain once it's filled up, and even a stance change that gives every character new normals. As to why I think this game is boring, well, it's a hard thing to explain without playing it yourself, but the game just feels bland to me. Hitstun has this weird feeling that makes you wonder if something is actually a combo. The game has bad balance because the roster feels like their toolset wasn't fully utilized. The game isn't jank, it's just empty. And this is where I'd say that the boring gameplay matches the depressing atmosphere if I was an essay channel. But no, the game is just unfinished, and not the most exciting thing to play for me personally. A lot of cool stuff is definitely here that could make something really great, but I can only imagine it never got the chance to be really fleshed out. All the ingredients are there, they just haven't been put together in my opinion. My opinion obviously hasn't stopped those who love the game from playing it though. From Evo Japan to HO, there's thankfully tons of high level footage that can be checked out, and you definitely should get a taste of what this game is like at a high level. Daraku Tenshi is an interesting game that entices you and leaves you wanting more. It was obviously rushed and didn't do well financially, but its style over substance has led it to be a point of interest in the hardcore fighting game niche. There are other niche titles that are a million times more competent that don't even have half the discussion online that Daraku Tenshi has garnered in articles and forums. This enthusiasm has even led to a complete edition of Daraku Tenshi to be announced over 20 years later in 2019. That promises to add the 4 incomplete characters that have been data mined, refine the gameplay, and come to consoles. But as of this time, there hasn't been any more news regarding this update. So hopefully it isn't vaporware, but that might fit the Daraku Tenshi aesthetic, wouldn't it? I've only scratched the surface of Daraku Tenshi, so check out the links in the description for more info, some match footage, some guides, a Discord, and try the game out online on 5K2.